Hi there, everybody. This is the Strategy Room interview series. I'm your host, Pete Lawson. And today I am joined by a guru of sales, the sales revenue person that I would go to for my coaching, I can tell you. It's Tom. Oh, Jesus, a tongue twister, everybody. You're going to get this, but Tom Pietryga. I got it right the first time. Perfect. Tom is the CEO of the Tom P Group, and Tom has some great stories. We've just had a bit of a chat before the real interview here, and I've sort of learned a hell of a lot. And I've taken about 2 pages of notes already. Tom, we will get started. Thanks for coming today. I really appreciate you coming on board and sharing some time with me and our group of listeners. Tom, can you share a story of what inspired you to become a business coach?
Can I change the word slightly? I evolved to being a sales coach. Okay. So by degree, I'm an electrical engineer. I became much more interested in the business side and ended up in roles of sales and then sales management, sales director, VP. I ran the Americas for some European software companies. What I found was most interesting to me was working with the 25 to 40-year-olds to help them be better at their craft, to have them be more successful. Frankly, it's an American comment, to be more financially successful, to change the financial arc of your family. You were going to go to a local school, now you can go to a fancy private school. That intrigued me. So I reached a certain point in my career that I evolved. That's the word I want to change. I wasn't inspired. I evolved into this coaching role because that's the part that was the most fun, changing the trajectory of those 25 to 40-year-olds. I was a little lucky that I had a landing place. A good friend of mine had a sales coaching organization, and he said, you know, it's a natural progression for you to go directly from running these organizations to frankly standing in front of people. You walk in the room and you have credibility. So I evolved into this role based upon finding the things I like, helping people, and an opportunity with a friend of mine who had a ready-made, would you like to coach organizations?
Right. Tom, we've had a bit of a chat before the podcast today, and we're talking about a lot of, you know, we've all got a lot of success stories. We've also got a lot of pain, but can you share a time when things didn't go as planned in your coaching journey? And what was the lesson learned there?
This was a very black and white lesson. When I got into this career path, I assumed VP of sales would embrace me, look at the background of experiences and pain I went through, and they would say, fantastic, we want this guy around. What I found is most sales managers frankly don't want to bring someone in who might have more expertise in front of their boss, because it's like, well, wait a minute, why am I not having him do the job? What are you doing here? So the first challenge I found is my target for these services is not the sales manager. It's the CEO of the company. It's the individual whose bottom line matters, who's looking at the development of all of his people in the organization. It's not the VP of sales trying to make his people more successful. That's too much of a challenge to his or her ego. I found I had to go a level above that. And then, frankly, once the CEO said, yeah, I think we want to do this, then I would say, is the VP of sales interested? And of course, they'd all say, of course they are. They report to me. And I would say, fantastic, but let's have a conversation to prove that out. Save your money if they're not interested in the feedback. Pretty simple. It was surprising to me that that's what I found. I expected the sales organizations would embrace. Nope, they're hiding from, I don't know, hiding from problems.
You've brought up you've brought up something there, Tom, and it brings me to this next question. How do you actually handle skepticism or resistance from clients? And what strategies do you use to break those barriers? In other words, a little more detail on how you deal with this VP of sales CEO thing.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of third-party stories because third-party stories allow you to acknowledge the objection. Well, my VP of sales isn't very interested in this. Got it. Not uncommon at all. Let me give you some insight into this other company who is in this software application area. She thought the same way. We ended up engaging, and here's the results she's now seen. What were you hoping that some outside consultant could help you with in this revenue area? And most of them, if you do it right, they go, oh, I want you to do that. You found a way to increase revenue by 30% with her. Yeah, I want that. So you leaned right into it. Yeah, I'd be skeptical too. I don't want somebody in my soup. But here's the results they had. What were you hoping that would happen for your group? Well, frankly, I want that. Great. Let's talk about how we can make that happen. Peter, that's how I deal with skepticism head on, whether it's debate about the content, whether it's the length of a program, what's the cost of the program, head on. You start with, yeah, makes sense to me. Many people think it's way too expensive. Do we mind talking about the results some of these folks have gotten from their investment? I have found a way to handle skepticism is with third-party stories. And frankly, it's a session I teach all the salespeople. You should be selling your product the same way. If you're in there talking about your product being bigger, taller, faster, greener, you've lost people. If you talk about the experience people have and the advantages your solution brought to them, you'll find they're much more open to that.
Okay, well, let's flip the script a little bit, so to speak. What do you? What's been your most rewarding moment as a business coach, Tom? I know there's probably a stack of them, but what would be your most rewarding?
It's about turning companies around. So a good share of the companies that bring me in have just been acquired by private equity. So they've gone from small entrepreneurial companies to where we now have accounting. We need to track our numbers, and they're tracking our numbers and they're not going so well. When we look back over the previous year, I look at it and say, whew, I can see why I got the phone call here. When we can turn that challenge they had in a particular year and put a new strategy and a plan in place that changes that revenue direction, accelerates the revenue in the right direction, Peter, that's a really good day. I know all the techniques we're using are fine. I know I've found a way to engage with the people. And most importantly, I've changed their trajectory. They're now all making more money, and sales organizations where people are on quota and making money, they're incredibly stable. Nobody's going anywhere. They're exactly where they want to be. That's when I can create that scenario. Yeah, that's the winner.
I think it's a winner too, because you mentioned that you looked at the numbers. And I love people that look at the numbers. I'm the numbers.
I know you're a numbers guy, and unfortunately, that's why that phrase "revenue solves all problems." Here's your top line. Now, how are you doing with the rest of the numbers? Because that dictates how many people you can have, how many sales folks, how many fill in the blank. It's all about the math.
Well, the cash flow calamity comes about by people living their lifestyle off the revenue instead of the net profit.
Understand. Well, that's where accounting comes in, because they're saying, good news, your revenue's here, but you realize your expenses are there. It's like, oh yeah, maybe we should have been watching the SG&A expense. I guess that's a factor, isn't it?
All right. Last question, Tom. You've been great today. I've really enjoyed our chat. By the way, everybody, Tom and I chatted about half an hour before we got on here today, which is quite unusual, but it's great when we've got some time. So looking back, what's one thing you wish you knew when you began coaching?
how challenging it was going to be based upon all the different personalities and motivations and infrastructure. So I just assumed, I'm from the enterprise software world. I just assumed the world worked in that way. What I found is it is much more complex than that. And it's the reason why my business model has evolved to not bringing in sales coaching, but frankly, discovering what people need, take a look at the library of content I have and saying, I think I know how to deal with your scenario. We should do session 2, 8, 12, and 15. That's what's going to help you. I think that's probably the thing that got my attention. I thought it could be more cookie cutter. It's not. You have to be a great listener, which is really because this is a presentation job. Turned out it was way, way more important to be a great listener, to understand what problem you're really solving, what progress are you making, and are we in fact getting people, to your earlier question, to the ending we're looking for, which is the growth curve being accelerated.
Tom, I'm sure everybody in viewing this podcast has got a lot out of that. Tom puts a new perspective on sales revenue, puts a new perspective on learning, puts a new perspective on how people get to understand. And Tom, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming on board today. I'm sure all our audience are going to write copious amounts of notes. I've got a sore hand, but it was great to learn about your entrepreneurial journey. And thanks again for that.
Thank you. Very kind. Thank you very much for inviting me.
And listeners, thanks very much for watching, whether it be morning, afternoon, good evening, good night. And I'll see you at the next episode of The Strategy Room.